and welcome to my session. And as you can see, I had to change the title of the presentation. So when I was preparing for the deep dive talk, I discovered a thing that I decided to share with Microsoft instead of you guys. So I had to, adjust the content a little bit, but I think we're gonna have a fun today. So this session is more like what bad can happen if you don't configure your stuff correctly. For instance, the session that Ru and Kat had about the conditional access would prevent at least a couple of things I'm going to show to you today. So please review those earlier sessions today from this track whenever they are available. So my name is Nestori Syrjinmaa. Hi, I come from Finland. I work for SecureWorks as a senior principal security researcher, and I think I'm most well known about my AAD internals toolkit, which I'm actually going to use today also. And the version I'm using here is not published, so it's some features might or might not become a features to next release. But if you are trying to things what I'm showing to you at your home, well, don't bother, most of them won't work. And I'm also MVP, actually dual MVP, so I have MVP for identity access and mobile device management, also known as Intune. And actually there's the nice badge, the with that 6 what's that, hexagon, yeah. So that's for Microsoft Most Valuable Security Researcher, and I'm very thrilled because this is the first presentation I actually have that badge. So although I've been MVR for 8 months now, but it's the first time I actually got that badge. And here are my contact details. Most easiest way to contact me or follow what I'm doing is on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is Dr. Azuredi. So please follow me if you think that you found anything I'm presenting today interesting, even remotely. And before we continue, a small disclaimer. So everything I'm presenting here are my opinions, not my employer, and especially not Microsoft. So don't try these at home. Okay, so let's move forward. So I have only 3 bullets here. So first, an introduction to Teams. So it's more like background information for things that we are interested in today's presentation. So yeah, I would say that it's background to how to access functionality and data of Teams, and then especially for the first demo I'm showing you, but we will come back to that later. So let's start about introduction of Teams, or introduction to Teams. So we all know Teams, obviously, because we are in Teams Nation. So I'm not going to, tell you the basics, but those things that we are interested at today. And well, we have teams in Teams, like in this Teams, I have a team called Teams Nation, so a lot of teams in one sentence. And in Teams, there are channels. And in channels, there are messages. And why messages are important? Well, because you can say that all the work is done through messages. Of course, there are other tabs up there like files and wiki and whatever apps you have added there, but the messages are the most important thing. So there are messages in channels. There are also messages in chats. So we have a chat and we have messages. And chat can be like between 2 people or multiple people, or it can be like, well, here in this meeting, there's a chat and it has messages. And speaking about messages, like the one here, there are some things that you can do with the messages you have sent or received. So you can like save messages, you can mark them read or unread. You can, well, if the settings allow you to do so, you can also like edit or delete messages afterwards. but that depends on the settings of the organization or teams. And that was a nice, like a leading way to setting some policies. So there are a lot of things that you can configure in Teams, like we have seen today in this track, and I think also in other tracks. So there are tenant level settings that are, well, they affect everybody in the organization. And we can also have policies, and policies are either organization-wide or global, or you can assign policies per groups. And these things can only be changed by administrator in admin center. So no regular users without admin rights can actually do anything about with these. And I will show a couple of these things to you in a minute. And then we have Teams level settings that or team level settings. I think that's the more appropriate way to say that. So each team have their own settings, and each channel in team have their own settings also. And these settings can be set by Teams owner. So, well, let me show you how it looks like. So I'm gonna pop up a window with the admin. So here's an example of how Teams level settings look like. So there are things like, well, Teams settings, and these things affect the whole organization, regardless of, well, what department you are from, or are you an admin or not. So all these, they are like, well, tenant-wide settings. Then we have the policies, for instance, like messaging policies. So we have the global policy that affects everyone. And as we can see, for instance, here we have allowed to delete messages. You can edit messages, and this is the default. But also we can set these policies per group. And here's an example of a policy that says that this, well, whoever user have been applied this policy, they can't edit messages or they can delete sent messages. Just an example. And nice way to quickly check which policies user have been applied. We have, like here we have Megan Bowen. So you can go to policies, and from here you can see that most of the policies are default, but when you click this one, which is not the messaging policy, you can see that how the user have, inherited this policy. So we can see that the Megan here is part of the group that has been assigned this policy that prevents editing and deleting messages. And then when we go to, well, the normal teams, there are, like here in this Teams Nation team, we have settings here, which you can change as an owner of the team. So you don't need to be an administrator, and you can do this inside your Teams client. Okay. So then let's keep on with the introduction. So how Teams knows about these settings and policies. So whenever you start up a Teams, it will phone home to Teams backend and says, hey, give me all my policies. So this is me, give me all my policies and settings I have. So whenever you start up Teams, the Teams client is going to do this. And also whenever you first time access a Teams or channel, a specific team or channel, the same happens. So the Teams client calls to Teams backend and says, give me policies. And then after the initial, let's say, request to policies and settings, the Teams client is constantly polling the changes. And here are actually some examples how it looks like. So the left one is from the first, when you start up the Teams, you will get a JSON file that has all the settings, and then the one here on the middle is when you access the Teams or channel for the first time, and then the one behind me is which is constantly polled by the Teams client. So it is quite aware of the settings all the time, and I can show that to you too. So we have the team settings here, and let me open up that's the wrong person. So I have a lot of demos here, so let's try that one. Yes, that's the correct one. So as we can see the settings, so the members of these teams are not allowed to delete anything or edit anything. And when I click the options open, we can see that they are like save message and mark and read and so on. But when I click here, keep an eye on the menu there. So what happens, it actually shows the options after I change the settings here. So the Teams client is constantly polling. And this was like a background information for our first demo. I'll walk through that when we get there. Okay, so then how can we access Teams functionality and data? So we have the first option is obviously you use the client, and then Teams client makes various calls to backend APIs. Or you can use Graph API, which then on your behalf is accessing Teams functionality and data. And these are the supported ways to do this. But there's also a third option, and that is to use Teams internal APIs. So if you know what's happens there, you can actually leverage those APIs too. And what are those APIs that Teams is using? So there's a lot of them, and here are a couple I'm 100% sure there is. I mean, like the basic Teams setup. Of course, if you add new applications or tabs to your Teams, they are using their own APIs and even the third-party APIs. But these are what I'm showing you are the like out-of-the-box things. So the first one is the teams.microsoft.com, and well, as the name suggests, that's for Teams backend. So all the messaging and meetings and calendar and translation, presence, all this information is and functionality is behind this API. And then we have files and Office Online, and they are in SharePoint actually. So the files you are handling in Teams, they are actually stored in SharePoint, which I think most of you already knew. And we have OneDrive, which is basically the same stuff, but for your personal use. Like for instance, when you are attaching a file to a Teams message, you can choose to get that file from your own OneDrive instead of, well, your disk. Then we have OneNote, and there's a immersive reader there, which means that if you want that Teams is reading aloud your message, that's what happens on the background. So you are actually using OneNote to do that. And there's an API called Learning Tools, which allows you to do that. And then with Outlook, there's voicemail, at least voicemail. I think there are others too, but directly they are using Outlook, as far as I know, for voicemail. And from these APIs, there are two that are undocumented and therefore not supported in any ways. And these are the Teams API and then the Learning Tools API. So as far as I know, the Learning Tools API is not public, but I might be wrong, but I didn't find any documentation for that. So without more slides, it's demo time. So I'm going to show you 4 things. So first, I'm going to show you how you can bypass this security feature, which is editing messages. And then, because we have this nice new feature, I think there are others in the audience who knows better when was this enabled, but I think it was a couple of months ago, so that every organization is federated openly, unless you say that no, we are not. And I can show you how you can leverage that to get cross-tenant presence information, and also how to make a cross-tenant phishing, which make things for adversaries much easier to get working phishing. And then I'm going to show you some fun stuff which these internal APIs allows you to do. So let's start by this edit message feature. So let me just put all the windows up there, and then I'm gonna put the PowerShell window here, which is I've already imported the AAD internals tool there, so it's ready to use. And let's start by writing a message as Megan, and Megan has like a double block. So in this Teams, you can't edit messages as we saw in Teams settings. And also Megan has been applied the policy that prevents her to edit messages. So let's see how this works. So I'll just type in a message here. I hate you all, like this. So now everybody else get the same message here, like I hate you all. And maybe someone, you know, doesn't like that. Say, I hate you, like this. So now we have some messages, but Megan can't, as you can see, can't edit the message and can't delete the message. So now we are going to still edit that message using Teams internal APIs. So first I'm gonna log in as Megan. Where is there? Type in the password, and I'm gonna get the access token, and then we can get all team messages. And I only want to see messages from this particular this was channel. So I'm just going to copy here the thing that is called thread ID. So I can get all the messages from this one just by running this line, and I can see that there are 2 messages. And the one that we want to change is this one, I hate you all. So I'll just copy this ID. Then I'm going to say send AAD int Teams message. That would be Teams. And I'm going to provide the client message ID. So instead of sending this message to any people, I'm just sending it to the same message ID. And message, I'll change it to I love you all. And we're going to need to provide the access token. And that should do it. So let's see what happens. So that should change. It usually happens immediately, but not always. So we might need to. Okay, now it changed. So now it says, I love you all. So that was that easy, actually. and it appears, at least now, that shouldn't happen, but it lost all the previous answers or replies to that one. But that shouldn't happen, but it happened. Well, this may happen when you play around with the internal APIs. So yeah. So which program I'm using here to run these lines of code? So this is ISE, or integrated scripting environment, that comes in every Windows. So it's a PowerShell ISE. Okay, so that was the first demo. I wanted to show you that regardless of the settings, you can actually bypass these by using Teams internal APIs. So this particular feature that you try to use to block the editing, that is actually just telling to the client that don't show that edit option. But in the backend, there's nothing that checks that actually. And there's a question about audit logs. So actually, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I don't think there's at least audit log, but yeah, that's a good question, and I'm not sure about that, to be honest. And there's a similar thing for deleting messages, but actually that is nowadays enforced in the backend. So even though the configuration is telling to the client to hide that delete option, so even though we would try to delete that using the API, the backend is going to say that no, you are not allowed to do that. So that's actually improvement from the last year. Okay, so that was the first thing. Another one is the second one is about cross-tenant presence information. So actually, 2 hours before this session, I had a meeting with a couple of guys from Microsoft, and one of them didn't appear there at all. And we wondered that where he is. And I said, no worries, I can check if he's like awake. So is he using his computer? Because there's an API you can query that give me the presence information of this dude. Okay. I can say get AD in Teams availability. I can provide the username, but because I don't want you to know who he is, he knows himself. I think he's watching. I'm just save his email address to variable, and what it says now, it says that he's busy and he's using desktop. In the morning he was offline, so he was actually sleeping, but don't tell. So that was the first one, and then the next thing I wanted to show you is the phishing. So let's open up the bad guy here. So this is another person. She's also Megan Bowen, but from different organizations, which I created to just make it easier to do the phishing stuff. So to do the phishing, we first need to get credentials to this person. So this is a woodgrove.myold365.site, whereas the other Megan was from woodgrove.office365labs.online. So different person. So I'm just gonna get the credentials for her, like this, and then I'm gonna get a access token and save it to the cache, and then I'm gonna specify which kind of messages I want to use. So just save these to variables. You will see those in a second. And then I'm going to specify the recipients who I want to send this message to. So I'm sending these to all people I know from that organization. and then I'm going to run this command. And this is going to exploit the device code authentication. So let's see how this works. Oh, you mean this one? There was a question why wasn't that changed? Well, because it may take some time. I don't know what's the logic there, but usually it does change immediately, but sometimes it can take some while. Anyways, so now I'm going to run the command, and this is a modified version of the existing phishing functionality, because now this supports the federated organizations. The current version doesn't, I mean, which is out there. So let's fire this up. So it is going to send message to everybody, and as we can hear them, so there are messages from Megan Bowen, and it's saying that, hey, I shared a document with you, so click here to open, and please use this security code. So I'm now this guy called Nestor Wilkie, and I'm going to click this button, and actually this is doing the authentication as that user, and this is the device code authentication flow. So you provide the code, and then you click next. Okay, yeah, this, yes, I'm trying to sign to Microsoft. Yes, I suppose so, because I got a link. And then, okay, nothing happened. So what's that? I don't know. And then what actually the code did was that after it received the access token from this guy, it changed the message using the internal API. So message is now, hi, are you the sales guy of the company? So the evidence was kind of wiped out. And what can we do now? Well, we can do anything that user can do. So actually, if I run now get AAD int cache, it saves the access tokens of this guy to, well, actually it didn't, because they are in the tokens. Sorry about that. So the tokens have tokens now for Outlook Web Access, AZ Core Management, what else? Exchange Online, AAD Graph. So I can say, for instance, now get AAD into users. Oh, yeah, get AAD into users, for instance. I can say this, and provide the access token, tokens, AAD Graph. Okay, what was it called? Oh, it's a core management. So AAD graph, so that should be it. AAD graph. Yeah, maybe there's something wrong here. No worry. But I do have the tokens. Okay, well, this is not good demo. Maybe this works better. Okay, try it this way. Okay, it doesn't want to do that for some reason. I don't know why. But anyways, we have the tokens and access denied. Okay, so there was some error in that code then, I suppose. But okay, we don't need to spend more time in here. But anyways, this was the federation now helps on this, that you can actually send this phishing to everybody in the organization. You will get back access tokens that actually work, and you can do stuff with those tokens as that user. Well, let me just try one more thing before I move forward. I have the access token for Teams, right? Yeah. So just going to show you that this really is the Nestor Will key and not the other person. So I just try to list all the these messages. For some reason, this just doesn't seem to work as it should. Yeah. So yeah, this is what happens sometimes when you do live demos, which I always do. Okay. Anyways, that was the cross-tenant phishing, and then to the end some let's say fun stuff. And let's start with this one. So we have, I think we have. Let me get the access token back here for Megan. Save it there, and just make sure that we have the messages here. Yeah. And the message is what we are interested at is where it is here. So that one. So what we actually can do is usually we can, like this, or we can smile or whatever, or then we can just, remove that. But actually, there's no technical limitation for how many things you can actually, emoticons you can actually choose. So let's try to see how that goes. Yeah. Let's try another message. This might be a little bit better one. Still the same one. Just want to make find the correct message here. No. Messages where content, was it content? Yeah. Like, I love you all. And just double check that that's the correct one. Nothing there. Okay, then we're gonna do this. Just dump that and find the correct one. What's the text? Lunch, I hate pizza. There's I hate you all. Well, let's try, does that work? I don't think it's going to work here, but let's try. Let's get the first one. And see, does this actually do anything? Yes, well, here we can see that at least some message got a lot of but we can see that because we edited that was. So this is a nice. But anyway, you can give all of those, and then you can get them away also. Like you can have 5 different things, all of these. So like you can be angry, you can give heart, laugh, like, and sad. And this is actually funny because these are going to be hundreds of these. So not just 5, but hundreds of these. and then you can use to fill messages with those. So kind of have a fun with your friends. Okay, and another one is that you can change the status. So if you, no, it's not that one, it's this one. So if you see here, what's going to happen is that you can change the status message programmatically. So you can do things like this if you want to. So there's no special, use scenario for that, except that when if you're able to get someone else's tokens with phishing, then you can actually do that. So you can change the person's status to something different. Okay, and what else we have? Then I'm going to show you a couple of things. So the first one is that there's an API with Teams that you can use to translate text to any other language you want to. So you just give it the text and ask translation for specified language. And then in OneNote, there's an API which you can send any text and ask for an MP3 file. So it is speaking that text aloud. So let me just get 2 access tokens for the Megan we have here. And then we have some Japanese text. So I copied this from this morning from a Japanese website. I have no idea what this means. So let me just translate that. And I'm using the verbose parameter so that you can see that there's actually some HTTP request going on in there. And it says that, okay, that is Japanese. So Teams recognize the language and it translates to this. So we will create opportunities for children and blah, 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 blah. So let's try to talk this out. So first we have a lady from America. Hope you can hear this.
Hi, Nestor. I'm not hearing anything coming through, sadly.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. So I might need to reshare my screen. Just a sec.
Good old system audio.
Yeah, it says that couldn't share system audio. The system audio sharing was stopped because of an error. Okay, that's nice. Microsoft doesn't like me. So they obviously, because they did that. So let's try again. So can you hear this now?
Yeah, hear the beep coming through. Thank you.
Okay, let's try again. So lady from America.
We will create opportunities for children and young people to become familiar with books, experience the fun and wonderfulness of reading, and make reading a habit.
And then our mate from Australia.
We will create opportunities for children and young people to become familiar with books, experience the fun and wonderfulness of reading, and make reading a habit.
And finally, some weird dude from Finland.
We will create opportunities for children and young people torstai become familiar with books, experience the fun and wonderfulness of reading, and make reading a habit.
Yeah, and with that Kimi Räikkönen kind of talk, thank you for attending my session.